All right, Alan. I do like to start these segments punchy. So you had the accolade of being called a wanker by Sir Alex Ferguson. Tell us about that.
I was editor of a programme called Standing Room Only, which was Britain's first football fanzine show. It used to go out on a Monday night at 6:30. And obviously we were always looking for stories. And at the time, Ryan Giggs was this brand new startlet of Manchester United. And Alex Ferguson was extremely protective of him. Wouldn't let him do any interviews, wouldn't let the press anywhere near him. And so we were discussing this, and one of the journalists, Jed suddenly said, he said, I'm sure I did a piece on him when he was at Bobby Charlton's soccer school for local news. So I said, well, if you can find the footage, and he did. He went to the library, found the footage, and we got Ryan Giggs at Bobby Charlton's soccer school as a 12, 13-year-old, and now Ryan Giggs is now 18. So it was a sort of irreverent show, but serious at the same time. So we dreamed up this film called Desperately Seeking Ryan, and we built it. Basically, we had this joke of trying to find Ryan Giggs in Manchester and always getting there just as he's left. Oh, he's left in the taxi. Turning up at a nightclub. Oh, he's just left, And that was, but ending on the interview with him when he was a kid. That was the sort of 6-minute film. That was the scenario. But the press office put out an exclusive interview with Ryan Giggs. Now the press went absolutely mad because they'd been trying to get an interview with Ryan Giggs off Alex Ferguson for years, basically. So they're all getting on to me saying, what's this interview? So I said, well, wait and see, trying to build tension. And then the phone goes one day, and my secretary, Julia, says, I've got Alex Ferguson on the line. Yeah, I said. Anyway, wonderful. And after about 30 seconds, I knew it was him. Because he was, what's this fucking nonsense? What's about an interview with Ryan Giggs? I said, well, it's a bit of fun, actually, Alex. I said, it's from when he was at Bobby Charlton's soccer school, several years ago. I said, it's actually been on telly before. It's not a lot. Anyway, I want you to pull it. I said, no, I can't pull it. I said, I'm the editor of the show. I said, we're not pulling it. I said, we've done nothing wrong. And then he called me an effing wanker, so that was it, and he put the phone down. So that was my running with Sir Alex.
Did the film get the views you would hope it did?
Yeah, it went out. I mean,
Did people feel cheated?
I think they probably did. Yeah, I was a bit naughty, but it's the press. I blame the press office.
That's the cunning of a rat again, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, racing, still not far from your horizon, even though you weren't involved like your brother, but Lester Piggot. Tell us about Lester.
Well, Lester was the one that got away. I was employed at the time by Chrysalis Television, and the phone went one day, and it was a guy called Bill O'Hurley. I hope I pronounced that right, so excuse me if I haven't. Bill O'Hurley, I think. And very Irish voice. What I didn't know then, I subsequently found out that Bill was the Desmond Lynam of Irish television. He was Mr. Sport. Would we be interested, he said, in doing a documentary about Lester Piggot? So, given we're a sports production company, I said, oh yeah, of course, yeah. Anyway, I had a long discussion with him, which ended in me flying to Dublin, meeting Bill, meeting Tracy Pigott, who's Lester's daughter, who at the time she was a sports presenter for RTE, I think. We had dinner in Dublin, we talked about the documentary, and I said, you sure Lester's up for it? Yeah, of course. So I said, well, who's funding it? So they said, well, Coolmore, Magnier and Sangster. They're putting up the money as a thank you to all the Derby winners that Leicester's ridden. Well, I smelt a bit of a rat, actually, but we went to Coolmore. I met Aidan O'Brien, who was this, he must have looked about 20 at the time, went on to become probably the world's most successful trainer. There was a little lad running around the yard called Joe. He was a little toddler who, I saw him at Cheltenham last week, leading in one of his horses as a trainer. And I saw the Sadler's Wells cover a mare at Coolmore, which at the time was, I said, how much is that? I think he was getting 150 grand a pop, which is some going, isn't it? Covering a mare. Got home, Tracy arranged for me to meet Lester, met him, got on like a house on fire. He invited me to be his guest of honour at the Leicesters, which is the Oscars of horse racing. And I've got it on VHS somewhere. There's me sitting next to Lester Piggot and the spotlight on us both. And I found him to be funny, not at all like his public persona, very witty, very dry. As I said, we got on really well. And then, I started making preparations for the documentary. We got it commissioned by Channel 4. And then one day Bill phoned up and he said the Coolmore had pulled out. And that was it.
You didn't know why?
I didn't know why. No, they gave a reason, but cash flow issues apparently.
Yeah. So other sports, well, give us you'd be too modest to just go into this. So give me your career highlights.
Career highlights. Well, I've been in newspapers and television for 35, 40 years, something like that. Newspapers, I suppose, Campaigning Journalist of the Year in terms of recognition, but
So what was that? What was that for?
That was for a cover-up at a factory near on the outskirts of Sheffield. There'd been a chemical incident, and the management tried to cover it up by burying all the toxic material, and workers there became ill, and eventually the plant was closed down, really at our behest. It wasn't really my story, I was just another hanger-on on the reporting team. So 3 of us got Campaigning Journalist of the Year, but only one of us really, it was his story, so it felt a bit as if I cheated a bit on there, but and in terms of film, I've got an RTS award for a film I made about the death of the World Cup squad in Zambia. The Zambia team were going to a match in the World Cup one night and a plane crashed in the sea, killing virtually everyone on board. There were just 3 members who were playing in Europe at the time who weren't killed, and they were the nucleus of the new team. So we did that story. But again, luck. I was in Zambia. I said, we were in Lusaka. I said, well, look, we need to go to the Copper Belt. That's the heart of football. I said, I've got lots of poverty shots. I said, but we need shots of, wealth. Because there is some wealth in Zambia. So we randomly drove about 3 or 4 hours. Randomly pulled up at a golf club to get a shot of people playing golf and the mountains in the background. Coming down the 18th, there's these two very big African guys, and one of them came up, I thought, quite aggressively, and said, "What are you doing filming?" So I said, "Well, I'm from the BBC in England." I said, "We're doing a film about the death of the World Cup." He said, "Well, I was the manager of that team." He said, he'd given up being a manager because of the lack of safety on the way they flew to matches. They used ex-RAF planes because they couldn't afford civilian rates. And he'd resigned. But just spotting this bloke in the middle of Zambia from nowhere, and he made the film. And that won the Royal Television Society Best Film.
And you were to do with the first sports cable TV channel?
Yeah, I set up Britain's first cable sports Sports Wire. That was owned by 3 American cable companies who wanted to get cable off the ground in the UK, which at the time it wasn't. It was just Sky, basically, satellite. And it was, we didn't have any money. They spent all the money we had no money for programs. So you had to be very sort of, lots of studio discussions about sport and not much else. Although they did buy the rights to the Lennox Lewis fights, and I produced the heavyweight championship of the world on the way to, because of the Lennox Lewis connection, which was George Foreman and Axel Schultz, I think it was, from memory. So that was a first for me.
So now, let's come back to, show us the book again, Alan. So this is the latest, and we've been talking about the Kid From The Kiosk, which has got the stories that you've been telling us, plus a hell of a lot more in it. You've also written other books, The Invisible Girl, Pottery Cottage, and The Crooked Spire Killings.
Well, when my TV career ended, I got made redundant from Chrysalis Television North, which I was operating for Chrysalis, and I started writing true crime. And the first one, which is too long to go, too long a story, but it's quite an interesting story. It was a story I covered when I was on the so I didn't actually cover it, I was involved in the coverage of, when I was on the Sheffield Star. That was my first real true crime book. Before that, I'd written a story about a genius scriptwriter who succumbed to anorexia. And since then, I've written a book called The Crooked Spire Killings, which is about homosexual killings in Chesterfield in the 60s. So they're sort of self-published. I half sort of sold them myself and half published them myself. And they did very well locally, and they've got some good reviews, so I'm really pleased about that.
So, well, up to now, sadly, Johnny's no longer with us, who I previously interviewed. I was grateful to be able to capture some of his story. You celebrate 50 years of marriage this year, have 9 grandchildren, and are about as far away from the kiosk as you can get, aren't you?
Certainly mileage terms, I'm about 200 miles from the kiosk. Yeah, Johnny, God rest his soul, he was the reason I wrote the book. His passing was the reason I wrote Kid From The Kiosk.
Yeah,
really,
sure,
because
don't be shy, let's see if people want to buy it. Yeah.
At his funeral, quite a few people came up to me that knew him and said, well, you know, end of an era, end of an era, end of an era. And so I thought I needed to capture my upbringing for my grandchildren, basically. And I printed it in, I think it came out 3 months ago, and I think two of the 9 have read it so far, so I've got that going. But yeah, it was an attempt to sort of remember the past, for them to remember where they came from, basically.
So is that it as far as writing?
No, I'm researching a book at the moment which is very unusual. After I published Pottery Cottage, a dear friend of mine, Nicky, knocked on my door with a book which was from the 1930s. It's a trial of a medical herbalist who had been, the medical profession had ganged up on him and had him arrested for killing one of his patients. And Nicky said to me that would be a really good story to follow up. Bless her, she died not long after that. And the book has been on my bedside table for a couple of years, and not long ago I picked it up and began researching the story, and it leads, it's a great tale, it leads all the way back to California in the 1850s and gadgetry in medicine and stuff like that. So it's really unusual. It's called The Healing Conspiracy. So watch this space.
Watch this space. Well, on that note, Alan Hurndall, thank you very much.
Thank you.